All right, welcome to this intensive exam prep explainer. Today, we're breaking down the global value chain upgrading theory, and we're going to use real Nigerian case studies to do it. We are looking at exactly why some countries, even those with literally abundant natural resources, stay poor, while others get massively rich. Okay, let's dive right into this, because really understanding this theory is how we actually start to climb out of the resource trap.
Here is the agenda for today. First, the value chain trap. Second, the 4 types of upgrading. Third, real-world Nigerian cases. Fourth, infrastructure and governance barriers. And finally, we'll wrap up with a quick GVC exam practice test.
Section 1, the value chain trap. Let's kick things off with a pretty shocking reality check on Nigeria's cocoa industry. The math here is honestly stark. Despite doing the hard work, growing, harvesting, and drying the cocoa, West African farmers get a measly 7 cents out of every euro spent on chocolate. Meanwhile, European retailers and brands, they're taking 80 cents. To put that into perspective, using INCAD data, Nigeria earns about $750 per ton exporting raw cocoa beans, but European processors rake in over $4,000 per ton on the finished product. West Africa produces 70% of the world's cocoa, right? But captures only $10 billion of a $200 billion industry. And hey, this isn't an accident. This is exactly how a global value chain is structured.
Section 2, the 4 types of upgrading.
So, to figure out how a country or firm actually escapes this trap, we need to master the academic framework of the global value chain, or GVC. Before we get too academic, let's just use a street analogy. Think of a GVC like a tailoring ladder at a Logan Market. Down at the bottom rung, the cotton farmer sells raw bales and earns the absolute least. Move one rung up, the fabric cutter adds a pattern, earns a bit more. Above him, the tailor sews a finished shirt. And right at the top, the international fashion boutique brands and sells that exact same shirt, earning the most by adding the highest value. Basically, the person at the bottom does the hardest physical labor, but the person at the top does the most profitable work. Take that ladder, apply it globally to entire industries, and boom, that is your global value chain. Now, according to the classic theory by Jerafe, Humphrey, and Sturgeon, there are 4 distinct ways to actually climb this ladder and capture more value with every rung. First, you've got process upgrading, literally just making the exact same product but more efficiently. Then, product upgrading, moving into more sophisticated product categories. Third is functional upgrading, where you take on a totally different, higher value function in the chain. And finally, chain upgrading, moving into a completely different but related and more valuable chain. You absolutely need to lock in all 4 of these definitions for your exams.
Section 3, real-world Nigerian cases.
All right, let's apply these definitions to the real world. In the cocoa sector, moving from exporting raw beans, which is rung 1, to grinding them into cocoa butter and eventually manufacturing industrial chocolate at rung 3 is a textbook example of product upgrading. You're working with the exact same raw material, but you are transforming it into a much higher value category. Côte d'Ivoire is actually making this climb right now. They're processing about 44% of their harvest locally through massive infrastructure investments, which adds up to $1,200 more per ton than if they just shipped it out raw. Now, looking at the oil sector, we see arguably the biggest act of upgrading in Nigerian history. For decades, Nigeria acted solely as an extractor, shipping out raw crude and then buying back refined petroleum at crazy high forex costs. But the $20 billion Dangote Refinery, that represents massive functional upgrading. By processing over 650,000 barrels a day into aviation fuel, diesel, and petrol, it completely transforms Nigeria from a mere crude extractor into a highly profitable refiner. The oil itself remains exactly the same, but the function Nigeria performs in the chain has radically changed to capture way more value. And if you want a brilliant illustration of chain upgrading, look no further than Nollywood. Back in the 90s, they were selling 500 naira VCDs at local markets, right? 0 international distribution. Then Netflix enters the scene, dropping over $23 million into commissioned originals like Blood Sisters and A Nicola Poe, which turned into massive global hits. Nollywood producers didn't just tweak their DVD production, they leaped entirely from the home video DVD chain directly into the global streaming GVC. It's a totally different chain with completely different economics, a real game changer.
Section 4, infrastructure and governance barriers.
So, a quick reality check here. If upgrading is this incredibly profitable, and the theory is this clear-cut, why on earth did it take Nigeria 60 years to build a massive refinery? What's actually stopping the climb? Well, as one perceptive Ireland user pointed out about the oil sector, it is not just about having the physical plant.
The answer lies in something academics call GVC governance. Basically, this represents the competitive self-interest and power dynamics of lead firms. The companies at the top of a value chain have a huge financial incentive to keep supplier countries stuck at the bottom.
The crucial takeaway here is that producers face severe structural barriers. Global lead firms fiercely protect those high-value processing margins using exclusive contracts and tight control over technology. But on the home front, we need major, targeted policy changes to fix our infrastructure deficits. I'm talking about providing reliable grid power and building solid cold chain logistics, because without those, local processing literally stops dead in its tracks. And let's not forget capital. Upgrading requires massive front-loaded capital investments, like, say, a $20 billion refinery, and we need access to that capital at non-punishing interest rates. These specific frictions are exactly why upgrading is so incredibly difficult. Section 5, GVC Exam Practice Test. Okay, let's lock this knowledge in. We're going to do a rapid-fire practice test. Take a second to read this recall question. Which type of GVC upgrading involves a country moving from raw material export into the processing and manufacturing of that exact same material? Is it A, process, B, product, C, chain, or D, functional? If you guessed B, you hit the nail on the head. The correct answer is product upgrading. Why? Because you're creating a more sophisticated version of the exact same base material, like moving from raw cocoa beans up to cocoa butter. You aren't just speeding up your workflow, you are physically changing the product category itself. All right, next question. Let's apply the theory to our biggest oil sector case study. The Dangote Refinery transforming Nigeria from a crude oil exporter to a refined petroleum products manufacturer is best classified as which type of upgrading? Chain, process, functional, or product? The answer here is C, functional upgrading. Think about it. The actual oil remains the same, but the function Nigeria performs in that value chain has radically shifted. We move from simply extracting the resource to refining and distributing it, which obviously commands significantly higher prices. Finally, let's really test your analytical skills on those structural barriers to ladder climbing. Imagine a student argues that GVC upgrading is super straightforward. Just process your resources locally and you're good to go. What is the most significant flaw in this argument? A, no local tech available. B, lead firms resist via GVC governance. C, processing always costs more. Or D, upgrading only works in producer-driven chains. The correct answer is B. That student completely ignored GVC governance. Lead firms that already occupy those high-value positions exercise massive institutional power. They use contracts, standards, and tech control to actively resist supplier upgrading. It's not some grand conspiracy. It is pure competitive self-interest, and it's absolutely the biggest barrier latecomer countries face today. To really cement this idea, look at two quick contrast cases. Take ABBA leather artisans. They have incredible production skills, but completely lack the brand governance and quality certifications needed to climb into premium retail. So they stay stalled mid-ladder. Now compare that to Nigerian tech founders, like the team at Paystack. They move from being outsourced service providers at the very bottom of the chain to actually building and owning their own products. They master the governance of their chain so perfectly that a global lead firm, Stripe, acquired them for $200 million. Technical skill alone just isn't enough, guys. You have to master the governance of your chain. So, for your exam, here is your foolproof formula for a perfect 20 marker. Make absolutely sure you can clearly define all 4 upgrading types. Anchor every single one with specific Nigerian economic examples, like Dangote or Nollywood. Clearly explain GVC governance and those local infrastructure deficits as the primary structural barriers. And finally, evaluate the strategic implications for both firms and policymakers. I'm going to leave you with this final provocative strategy question to think about. The question is honestly never just, do we have resources? The real question is, where does your own business, your sector, or your country sit right now on its value chain ladder? Are you just selling the raw version of what you have? And more importantly, what is actively stopping you from climbing to that next rung to earn twice as much? Think on that, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.